Welcome to our limited series of audio panel discussions where we will be sitting down with members of the Beacon team to unpack all things recession-proofing your marketing. I'm Jess Hadleigh and I'm Managing Director at Beacon Agency, and I'll be hosting today's panel. With budgets getting tighter, organic reach has never been more important. So in this episode, we're focusing on getting the most from your SEO, organic content, and making your website work harder for you. On today's panel, we have Rob Marriott, Marilize, Loxton, and Sophie Pierce. Rob, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Rob Marriott. I sit in the strategy team at Beacon and I have experience in social media management and social media advertising.
Hi, I'm Marilize Loxton. I'm a copywriter here at Beacon. I sit in the content team with a particular focus on organic content and maximizing the reach of your output.
Hi, I'm Sophie Pierce. I'm the content director here at Beacon. I am sitting on the panel because I absolutely love finding new ways of telling stories, which, let's face it, is what organic content creation is all about.
Well, welcome to the panel, everybody. So we'll start and kick off with our first question. With budgets likely to being a bit tighter this year, there will be more pressure on organic output reaching a wider audience. So if we're going to start looking into SEO or improve this in January, where do you think that everybody should start?
I guess I would say a good place to start would be to look at both the structure and the content of your website. Is your website easy to navigate? Is it mobile friendly? And your content, are you confident in the quality of your content? Are you confident in how your content represents your company, your brand, your service? These are all fundamentals, and you don't have to spend money to get them right. Which I think makes it like a perfect place to start.
Absolutely. I guess sort of creating that plan to work off, because we're all sort of in that kind of hamster wheel of content creation.
Yeah.
But having that sort of framework that says, these are the things that I need to be focusing on. This is what my audience is interested. These are the keywords I need to be having in there and making that work a bit better for you for the year is sort of key.
Knowing your audience, especially, taking time to get under their skin, what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't like, how they behave, and studying your own behaviour as well is so much part of that, because quite often you might be the target audience that you're trying to reach, especially as well.
I'd also say as well, looking from a social media point of view as well, building up that community of your followers. You know, once you have a strong community base that you're regularly communicating to, they're much more likely to engage with your content and share, which helps boost your reach to so much more other people.
And I guess going back to Marilize, what you said about the technical side, a lot of us have a website that we create and then we'll use it for a few years, but it's like a car. It needs an MOT every so often. And, I know from, obviously, if I'm going to talk from a technical perspective from my side, massive improvements can be made to your SEO if you can speed it up. So compressing images, looking how it's performing. There's lots of really great free, Google has one, and there's another one, I think it's GTX, that you can just put your website into and it'll give you a good report. So having that and understanding that and looking where you can make some quick wins, it doesn't necessarily mean a website redesign to do it. You can just do some very good content one. But I guess there's also that from a content auditing side of it, you would say probably a good thing to go through and just see if the current copy and content you've got on your website serves your sort of organic reach goals.
Yeah, I would say you don't have to be necessarily an SEO expert to conduct something as easy as like a keyword audit. Because as a company or brand, odds are you already have keywords that you want to be focusing on. And that also makes it a great place to start to kind of do a baseline keyword audit, see use Google Keyword Planner. SEMrush has a free tool that you can use to scan your website for the keywords that you're already ranking for. Then you can see, okay, these are what I'm ranking for. Are they what I want to be ranking for? And then with the tool like Google Keyword Planner, you can find other keywords that you might want to rather focus on. You can see things like how the search quantity, how many people are searching for it, the difficulty, and that way you can kind of see where is my website currently and where do I want it to be, with all these free tools available to you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if you are looking at your keywords for the first time and seeing where you're ranking, what's a really important thing about keywords is not necessarily stuffing your content full of it. It's quality over keywords every single time. It's going to win. So while you need to be aware of it and have that in your plan, it's really, really key that it fits into whatever you're doing organically.
Yeah. And in terms of implementing keywords, you don't have to implement that specific keyword the entire time. Using variations of it, using it like in a different sentence, in a different way, Google still recognizes that as related to your original umbrella keyword. And that really helps with preventing keyword stuffing, because otherwise you might just use the same word time and time again. And that negatively impacts when your website, when Google crawls it.
And is there something about thinking a bit wider with your content than you necessarily would think in terms of themes and topics? So to give you an example, say that this year, and we know this year from CES and from the sort of conferences that we attended, that putting humans first or people-centric or anything that's doing good for the planet is really, really, really important this year. So you might feel that it's a good fit for your brand to talk about something that gives back to the planet. Say energy efficiency, for example, is your big thing. Rather than keeping it directly on your products, would you say there's a benefit to widening it up when it comes to getting organic reach that's a bit better?
Definitely. I think it's about understanding, what are you saying? Like, ultimately, all content creation should be, what are you saying? What do you want people to hear? Asking yourself, when I speak, who listens and what are they taking from it? And we talk about this idea of casting your content net. What stories are relevant to your audience that you might not necessarily have considered that would help with your organic reach? So you wouldn't necessarily always think, well, my product is X, therefore I will always talk about X. You would think, what are the things around it? So I would, one sort of word of caution with that is, you don't want to cast your net so wide that it dilutes your message and your key values of your content. And also you don't want to gain a new type of audience talking about a subject matter that actually you just kind of did because you thought might be relevant to them. You want to be consistent, true to your values, true to what you're trying to say, and think about everything you want around that. So I like to think of it as being a little bit like, if your content was as a universe and your brand is the star in the middle, you want to think about like what the planet topics are going around it, what's orbiting it. And then of those planet topics, what are the satellite topics that are orbiting or in the orbit of those planets? So if you took, for example, a femtech brand whose specialism, their hero product was breast pumps, you would make the breast pumps, the products, the star of the shows, but then these planet topics might be other things, for example, mental health of new mums, or the early days development, the benefits of breastfeeding versus bottle-fed feeding, or just why a fed baby is best, let's face it. It might be around the ease of mobility of the products. It could be around the green impact, possibly, if that was relevant. But then under each of those, you want to think about, they're my planet topics, what are the satellites underneath it? And we're thinking about recession-proofing, where we want to work smarter, not necessarily harder. So much of doing that work about planning your topics and what other things will resonate does so much of the work for you. So, I mean, and thinking how big you want to go. I mean, especially on the topic of mental health, you could be thinking, okay, we can't do it now in a recession, but in 5 years' time, we want to be seen as the brand that was lobbying for political change. But in the meantime, we're going to partner with an influencer or a podcast that really puts mum's mental health at the forefront of their conversation topics. Or we're going to create some content that's like top tips for ways to use our product while also staying mobile with a toddler hanging off your hip. So it's thinking, what's the headline story? But then also, what are the other stories that someone else in a desperation, 3 a.m, a mum might be going, please help me. And this might be the path into finding your topic. And that's why I like thinking of this universe, because it's not linear. It's not an obvious route. You wouldn't think, I want to sell this, therefore I will search this. You just don't ever know the way that someone might come across your brand or what's relevant to them.
Absolutely. When it comes to the content you create, how can you make that work harder for you this year? And what are the key things to think about? So how do it's so difficult at the moment in terms of, you could be putting out 5 pieces of content a day, you could be putting out once a week. It's, the scale of it, the feeding the beast, or as the content beast, is so hard. So a lot of the time, like we were saying, like you just said, we want to work smarter, not harder. So how, if you've got reduced resources, can you make that content work for you a bit harder?
You absolutely hit the nail on the head there with content is a beast with a never-ending appetite. And if you let it, it will rule the roost for you. So you have to kind of put things in place to manage it, manage yourself, and also to make it enjoyable for you. I think too often people, it's this kind of burden around your neck. You think, oh God, I need to put something out. But especially around organic content, people see through stuff that doesn't really feel like it's you or that you're happy talking about. So first of all, I would say when you're doing your kind of content planning and thinking about how wide your net is, think about not only do people want to hear, but also what do you want to be saying that is enjoyable and relevant to your brand. But the main thing, this idea of making your content work smarter, not harder, is that too often I think we think, right, I've posted that amazing blog, I've posted that video, and I'll never touch it again because it's been seen by everyone. But I think the main thing you can do with content, or especially organic content, is to have humility and to acknowledge that possibly not everyone in the world saw it the first time you posted it. So it's a bit of a like industry secret, but it's okay to repost things. Obviously you don't want to be doing it every single day and people think, oh God, I'm sick of the sight of that. But reposting it in a considered way. Maybe you've changed the caption, maybe you've sliced and diced it a bit differently. But also one topic, just in an abstract sense, the one headline will feed sort of 10, 12, 15 different little content babies in different avenues. You could take one incredible long form piece of content that you've written as a blog post and it could become the feature in a direct email marketing campaign. It could be just something that you took this incredible nugget of fantastic copywriting from and you just displayed it beautifully in a typographical type social media picture that someone would go, oh my God, that absolutely resonates with me. It could be that you sort of chopped it up into top tips and made it into a kind of carousel, scrolling things. It could be that you turned it into a video that someone's saying, oh, you might have seen that we posted this blog post. We sat down with two experts for whom it really resonated with, and we're bringing it to life a bit more. Or even you're just kind of taking the blog post and turning it into a script. Or it could just be simple enough as just thinking, I'm just going to take the time while I'm posting it once to post it again in 2 weeks' time, in a month's time, in 6 months' time, making it more seasonal, making it more relevant, and finding the universal ways to do it. Because the more creative you can be in breaking down your content, the further it reaches. And that's just from one idea that you had, 1 hour of thrashing out some ideas onto your keyboard and thinking, what am I really trying to say here? And from that, you've fed all your little babies of Content Monster who are going, thank you, thank you, thank you, without really having to do any more thinking than you were originally doing for just that one big piece that you were feeding at the beginning.
And absolutely. And even from a technical side, I'm sure Marilize will agree with me for SEO, you can pull, or, if you look at your history of the content you have created, pulling it all together into themed, what I like to call a pillar post or themed pages and say, hey, this is everything we've talked about in regards to email marketing, and popping that out there has such an amazing, that's a bit of content to go out there. You've not really pulled much else together, but it has such an amazing benefit on your sort of like reach, doesn't it?
Especially, yeah, definitely. And especially even if you don't create a new post with like a pillar post with links to your old posts, as you continue to post new content, always keep in mind, what other piece of content that I've created can I link back to this? Because the more you link back your old content, your audience might be reading this and see like, oh, they've got like a related post, and go back to it. And the more you link your older posts to newer posts, that stops your post from essentially being archived SEO-wise. Because Google does if Google sees that post or that page is still relatively active and still being linked to, it does still have an impact on the search rankings. It does improve the search rankings as well.
And I guess this is go back to what Sophie said in the previous question about thinking of it as a universe and not sort of linear. This is the biggest assumption that we all have when we're creating content or marketing, is we think of our audience as being in the same place as we are when we're creating it. And actually somebody might come across that post you put out for the first time. That's the first time they heard your brand, and they've never seen this wealth of other information, and they're not going to go trawling through your archives like is it to find it. So we have to never assume that everybody's coming to the piece at the same time and making Instagram.
Yeah, you really have to kind of think of the clever ways, but also I hate to use the word, but authentic ways to get your content under people's noses in a way that when they see it, it won't jar with them. It won't turn them off. It won't make them go, oh, this isn't for me. They'll go, that's really interesting. you clearly understand what my struggle is, what my problem is, and therefore I will take the step that all of us are trying to work towards, which is engaging with the brand, making a purchase, clicking on further content, becoming a more nurtured, nourished lead for the brand that you could pass on, and that ultimately will cause an emotional response, which is they make a purchase or they take your services further, which is what it should all be about, especially in a recession when we're just trying to get that little slice of noise in the universe.
And I guess coming out of necessary organic, just the reach, to getting it in front of somebody, getting that organic engagement performing better, i.e. the people reading our content. I mean, this is where it's so important, because effectively they, are more likely to share, oh, I've just seen this amazing brand, with their wider remit. If in that one first hit, they got these multiple different things from it and go, oh, it had this resource, it had that, and it was great, you should check it out. I think that's going to be more likely to happen than if you sort of drip feed this sort of, oh, that was a nice new post, that's great.
Yeah. I also think one last thing on this about talk about making it work harder for you. Too often, and I say this with love as a former journalist, we focus on the words and we don't necessarily think about its visuals, but actually, as we know, like especially short form video content and video and moving image and really eye-catching things, there's this kind of content fatigue out there that people you talk about doom scrolling, and you're just kind of going through things, and you want to make something that is not only eye-catching, that looks beautiful and you feel like correctly displays how you want to be displayed, but also would feed the dreaded algorithm, because social media platforms are rewarding people. If you can make people linger longer, which video content does, it rewards you. It goes, hey, you fed our algorithm, therefore we're going to give you a little bit more of that noise next time that same person comes on. They linger just that little bit longer, so we're going to show extra bit of your content next time. And therefore, creating something that is visually, it doesn't matter how well written or how incredible the content is, if it doesn't stop someone in their tracks and go, that's lovely, or that's eye-catching, or that's interesting or intriguing, or I want to find out more. It doesn't matter how good the content is, because no one will see it, and that is a bitter pill to swallow for someone who lives and breathes words. But I think that balance between visuals, words, it's the whole picture, and I think that's the key thing, is thinking it as holistic, whole picture thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings us to a really important part, which I think is the big thing that everybody battles with when it comes to content creation, is level of content that you put out versus the quality of the content. How do you be consistent, and what's the sort of equation for that? Because I don't know about you guys, but I get asked all the time by people like, oh, but how many pieces of content should I be putting out in a week that's going to be optimum? So what would you guys answer to that? So say I was the client today, how many pieces of content should I be putting out? What would you say is the best?
I think avoiding the trap that what works for one person is going to work for you, thinking what is sustainable for you, what can you do, what is making a rod for your own back, and going back to the idea of working smarter. If you can plan, the more you can plan, the less you're thinking, oh my God, I said I was going to do 4 pieces of content this week and I haven't got any ideas. You should be working on a sort of rolling 90-day, 3-month content plan would be a really strong start. And then I think as long as you're consistent, I would never say to someone 20 things a day, because that's not going to be consistent. They're going to stumble at the first block. But if they're like, do you know what? Actually, I think we can aim for maybe a piece of video content once a week and maybe 2 written things twice a week. But actually, we're going to get into such a good position with our content plan that it doesn't mean writing new things. It means taking that fantastic blog post that we did 2 months ago and looking at it, writing it into a script, turning it into a carousel, so that you're suddenly looking at content not in this way of, I have to have all these new ideas, but you're thinking, how do I take my existing content and make it go further, reach more people in more interesting ways? So I don't have this X number of content topics, because I think it's unique to each brand, but it would be, what can you do? And also thinking more cleverly and thinking, oh, I don't think I need to think as much as I think I do. What a terrible sentence, sorry. But there is more work that I've already done that I can call upon that pool of resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. It is better to be consistent, whether that's getting support from us, so getting a marketing agency to give you that support, because you've got to think about the budget you're spending with them, but also in the consistency of the stuff that you do. It's whatever is actually feasible to get good. And I always think fairly good quality or good quality work out there consistently. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have to be perfect, because that can sometimes hinder a lot of putting out, a lot of companies putting out content is, it needs to be perfect every time. Sometimes good enough is good enough, and it will give you the information that you need to plan out things in future. But yes, it's consistency will always trump anything else.
And that's the forgiving nature of social media. It's a kind of fail fast, move on to the next thing quickly. Like, we have a lot lower expectation of quality of output on social media. So use that. We're not saying, you need to create a sort of 90-minute feature length film worthy of an Oscar nomination, actually. And some of the best things that have had the most noise and gone viral have been the things that people are just kind of thrown together. And it's the heart behind it, the story behind it, that's what's resonated with people, and otherwise you'll just then, you could think, this trend is, this thing is trending. How are we going to do it? What's going to be weird? And before you know it, life has moved on. The internet is a fast moving pace. So better just get things out there. And it's authentic and true to yourself.
Exactly. And going back to sort of points on humility, I think it's it's something that we think we understand what perfect looks like. And I would always challenge people to say, no, you don't. Your audience will. And you won't know until they've engaged with it. So sometimes you have to, and this is me being a perpetual student, and take that kind of vision of it, is I'm going to push content out and then I'm going to review it and look at the data and make improvements based on my audience reactions, not from what I assume is what I think is, unless, like you say earlier, I align with who I'm trying to advertise to. This is why influencers work so well.
Let things go. It's really hard, especially as a content creator. You'd like to think everything you do is your best work, but sometimes it just doesn't resonate, and that's okay. But you think, what could we take from it? What's worth saving? What's kind of probably we should just bin off because actually it wasn't really that great. But actually, if we could improve it, and again, this is the forgiving nature of social media, because not every single person in the world has seen your content first time around. So take it, hone it, improve it, put it back out there again with a different skin on or whatever, and you might have an incredibly different reaction the second time around.
Absolutely. So taking all that, I've got a question for all of you guys, which is, what tips or quick improvements can you make to your website, content, or social media platforms that could give you instant wins when it comes to organic output? So if you were going to give everybody a top tip on making an instant change or an instant win to their platforms to improve their organic reach, what would you give them?
I would say one thing before even thinking about making any changes is to become aware of what the algorithm wants. You need to look at, for your industry, what works. What does the algorithm prefer? Some industries prefer less keywords, more sentences. Some are the opposite and want more keywords, less sentences. So I think before you make any changes to anything you're currently doing, just become aware of what is working in your industry.
I mean, that's really good. I mean, it's always having a little cheat sheet, effectively. I mean, that's a change in and of itself. Yeah, I think that's a really good one, because obviously then you can make sure that anything you're planning further forward is going to work for you. Marilize, how about you? What would be your top tip?
From a technical standpoint, I would say to look at website loading speed. If your website is slow, it does negatively impact your search results or your search result ranking. And Google has a great tool to help you. It's called Google Page Speed Insights, where you can evaluate your website speed, and then they also give you insights on where to improve. And then also keyword-wise, again, if you're not clued up into keyword implementing your content, the platform SEMrush, their free version, gives you a tool where you can paste your copy in your blog post or your social post. You can paste it in there. It evaluates your copy for you, tells you how you've kind of utilized your keywords, have you utilized it correctly, what keywords. The tool takes keywords that it sees can be of relevance to your piece. You have to go manually work them in, but it does help you a great deal if you don't have that knowledge, which again, you don't have to be a professional. You have all the tools to make it the best quality that you can.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely so much help out there to make that plan and make that start, and then being able to get more from it. Sophie, how about you? What would be your top tip?
I think I would say find an impartial judge. someone who can run an impartial audit of your existing content, your website, your social media platforms, your content, etc. And that could be someone that you probably might well overlook. For example, the newest member of your team, or even if you're feeling based on who applied for a role and include it in the interview process. What did you think of it? Sometimes they mention it. They were, I wasn't really quite sure. And you think consistently things in interviews are coming up where people haven't really got it. Or even a family member or a friend, someone who can be impartial, who knows enough, knows 5% possibly, who can go, I understand the gist of it, but actually what you're saying, or do you know it doesn't really have case studies on your website, or you say this, you say you're an expert in this, but I'm not seeing anything that backs it up. What I am hearing much more consistently, something you've not even said you're good at, is that actually the direction that you're going, etc., etc. So I think having an outside eye, or if you're able to be impartial and honest yourself, like, okay, I'm going to put aside my own pride and my work that I spent months doing, and I'm going to look at this with a fresh pair of eyes. But yeah, taking the time to do an audit of your existing stuff, for me, is a really quick thing you can do. And don't necessarily rely on one person, put it out to a couple of people, say, hey, what do you think about this? And don't say anything, just say, what would you do differently? What do you like? What don't you like? Because that is always free insight. Anything that you can get from opinion from anyone else is an incredibly valuable tool.
Absolutely. And taking that a step further, if you were to engage with a marketing agency or a consultancy, I would say personally, from my perspective, that's one of the biggest things that, the best spends that you can make in terms of value is to get them to set you up effectively, and go, right, this is what's working well, this is what's not, this is, like we do with a lot of our clients. And then, yes, sometimes we also go on to create loads of content for them, but other times we're helping them to create the content themselves. So it's such a good investment to make, because you do it once, you get that picture, then you can grow from there.
One of my favorite things to do for clients is simply to hold up a mirror. It's just reflect back to them, like, this is what you say, but this isn't what I'm getting, or actually this is totally what I'm getting, and how to move it further. I just think sometimes you just need someone to hold up a mirror to you and take some time to study its reflection.
Absolutely. So last thing I would say is it's bringing it back to a sense of wellness. So, which might seem like I'm being in a recession, everybody's sort of wanting to work hard, supercharge what they're doing, push through because times are tough. But what you don't want to do is end up burning yourself out. So in terms of tackling all of this, creating like a never-ending stride, how do you start to break through that noise, but keeping mindful of your yourself and burning yourself out?
I suppose one thing I would say to help break through the noise as such and see more sort of organic reach in your content is to make sure you're adding an alt text to images. It's known that when you add an alt text to an image, it helps Google and other search engines find your website, find your social media. It helps search engines find your content.
So, and I guess, adding that into your well-being, you probably need to do less content. If each piece is much better, like, set up and it's got its alt text and you've got your sort of metadata and everything together, it means you put less out and still get the same impact. So, yeah, definitely.
I think it's just, don't try to be everything to everyone. Don't try to be, you can only do so much in the day. And as we said, content creation is a never-ending beast. So be selective about what you want to feed it and what of yourself you have to give. Be personable, be yourself within the confines of your brand and your correct tone of voice. Have fun, take risks, and do things that you talk about wellness, that bring you joy in creating it. We so often see that the brands that are having both fun with their marketing, that know how to kind of be a bit tongue-in-cheek or to poke fun a little bit, or not take themselves too seriously, quite often the ones that everyone's talking about. So I think you don't have to be everything to everyone, as long as you are being yourself. And within that, find if it's appropriate for your brand, and you can find the ways to be playful, be childlike. For me, that is a way to avoid burnout, because you'll enjoy what you're doing, and you won't feel like this burden is on your shoulders. But also I think it goes back to everything we said about before, about getting your foundations in place, working out your audience profiles and what they want to hear, what your stories are, planning. And if you took an hour to do a brainstorming session around all the different stories around your universe, what your planets and what your satellites are, it almost does the work for you. So you won't be thinking, oh God, what am I going to do today? You'll be thinking, I'm really excited to write tomorrow's thing, because it was something that when I was planning, it brought me joy, and I knew it would bring my audience joy because I've done the work to get to know them, and I've already got the people lined up to get involved with it, and it's going to be a really fun thing to work on. Therefore, you're not going to feel burnt out by it.
Yeah, I would go back to what Sophie said about repurposing before. You don't have to constantly be churning out new ideas. If you take one idea and maximize it to its fullest potential, then you can still cut above the noise without burning yourself out. And if you also take, again, hammering on about the tools that are available to us, TikTok is essentially a video editing tool. Canva, if you can't create your own suite of branded content, you can get someone like a marketing agency just to create your suite for you, and then you can go run with it. Make sure you have that consistent look and feel throughout the content that you produce. If you're not a whiz with words, you can get Grammarly. Grammarly can help you pinpoint those basic mistakes that you make, so you can just make sure that the content that you do put out there, even if you aren't a skilled content creator, that it is at least good enough to represent you the way that you want it to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very, very much for a fascinating panel. It's one that we could probably keep talking about for hours and hours on end, but we're going to stop there with all our questions. And yeah, thanks again, everybody.